Firstly, I'd like to introduce our opening speaker. Please come to the table, Gihan Perera. Gihan's topic is Fit for the Future. A quick bio here. Our world is changing faster than ever before. If you resist this change, you'll fall behind. But if you embrace it, it creates huge opportunities. Our next speaker will explain how the world has changed, why you need to do something about it, and what you can do individually to make a difference. Gihan has been using the internet since 1987, a long time before most people even knew it existed. He's a respected author with the popular selling The Future of Leadership, as well as 10 other books. Forbes magazine rated him as the #5 social media influencer in the world and #1 in Australia in his chosen area of expertise. For a glimpse into tomorrow's world, please welcome speaker, author, and most importantly, chocoholic, Gihan Perera. Welcome.
Thanks very much, David. Thanks very much, David, and welcome everyone. I want to give you a little bit of a glimpse into the future today, because wouldn't we all like to know what's in our future? What would you like to know? How long are you going to live? People are asking about the presidential election, and of course everyone wants to know Saturday's lotto numbers. So what if I told you that I recently came face to face with the future in the most unexpected way when I went on a journey into my past? See, 4 years ago, I went on a holiday to Sri Lanka with my parents. Now, this is the country where I was born, but I hadn't been there for more than 30 years. So as you can imagine, it was quite an amazing experience. Sometimes I felt inspired, sometimes I felt crowded, and sometimes I even felt tall. It was great. You know, Sri Lanka is more famous for tea than coffee, but really, it's just a country of 23 million short blacks. So, why am I showing you these pictures? Not because I think you want to see my holiday photos, but if you do, come up to me at the welcome reception. I've got a whole other slide deck prepared. But I want to tell you about a conversation that I had on the very last day that I was there. I went with my dad to visit one of his old school friends. So that's my dad in the middle of the photo with the camera around his neck and his friend standing next to him. But on the far left of that photo is his friend's grandson, Rajiv. He's a giant by Sri Lankan standards. He's 5'6". And he works in IT. Now, that doesn't mean he works in a call center. He set up a software company with 3 of his mates, and it's done really well now. It's floated on the US stock exchange. And what they do is they analyze satellite photographs of shopping center car parks. And based on the traffic coming in and out, he can tell a retailer where to build, where to expand, what are the best opening hours, even what products to stock in each season. And now they've got clients all around the world. Here in Australia, they work with Target and Woolworths. So there are a lot of people who will tell you how the world has changed, but I reckon when a bloke in boardies and sandals, working from his home office in Colombo, Sri Lanka, can tell me what I can buy in my local Woolies in Perth, that's when we know the world has changed. Do you agree? And it's changed in 3 big ways. It's fast, it's flat, and it's free. So let's talk about what that means and what that means for this industry. So we'll start with free first, because we all know that things that used to cost a lot sometimes cost a lot less. And you know this if you've bought a song on iTunes instead of buying the CD, or you download an ebook to your Kindle instead of buying the paperback. You see some of the Gen Ys going, what's a CD? What's a paperback? Just through confession time here, who's ever walked into a shop, tried on some clothes or tested some technology, knowing fully well that you're going to go back home later and buy it online for half the price? Yeah, right? Every time I ask this question, more people put up their hands. And this is what's happened. Our world's become more competitive and it's become freer. And we know this is true of insurance as well. PwC did some research asking consumers, what would you do and what would you be willing to do in order to lower your premiums? This is some of the research that came out. How many people would be willing to provide more personal information in order to get a reduction in premium? Well, yeah, about half of them did. Do you do online research before choosing a provider and choosing a product? About 2/3 of them said yes. Would you be willing to attach a sensor to your car or your home to monitor your behavior in order to get a lower premium? Again, about 2/3. And this is what's happening with technology. And in fact, that is the second big change. The second big change is that our world's got faster because technology has made our world faster. Do you know there was more computing power in the first digital watch than in the spaceship that put a man on the moon? So you can just imagine that. Oh, just to check something here. Are there any Gen Ys in the room, like 35 or younger? Okay, good. First of all, thank you for still being here. But I need to tell you what a watch is. Why? It's this mobile device that we had in the 20th century. And you can tell the time and nothing else. Right? It's crazy, isn't it? It's such old technology. But it's a bit like this. Putting a man on the moon, in a few years from now, we'll be able to send people to other planets far beyond our solar system. Can I see a quick show of hands who'd like to get in a spaceship and go to another planet? Okay, there's always a few. Who can think of somebody else who'd like to put on a spaceship and send to another planet? Yeah, right, okay. Don't point to them. I know, it's the same with me. It's like, bye-bye, Kim Kardashian. Yeah, I know. That's not very fair because any of the Kardashians would do. But here's my point. So we don't have the technology yet, but that's not the problem. So here's the problem with that whole Kardashians in space scenario. In a few years' time, you'd be able to get in a spaceship with Kim and Chloe and Courtney and head off to another planet far beyond our solar system. But before you get there, long before you get there, you'll be overtaken by another spaceship that left Earth years after you did, but with better technology. So why would you get on that one? You might as well wait, right? But this one's got the same problem. Before it gets there, it gets overtaken by another spaceship and so on. The paradox is, it doesn't make sense for any one of them to leave Earth. And yet, until one of them does, nothing happens. And you go, that's crazy, but I bet you do the same with your own technology. Oh, you got the iPhone 6, and I should upgrade to the iPhone 7, but no, Apple will bring out the iPhone 8 soon, so I'll wait. Oh, I need a new iPad, but no, Google and Samsung will bring out something that's a phone, tablet, and glasses combined, so I'll wait. The pace of technology gets in the way of us making progress. And we have so much technology now, especially in this industry. There's a huge increase with technology that monitors and controls and manages the way that we can measure risk. For example, my little Fitbit connects to Fitbit.com, so I have my data available in the cloud of how many steps I run every day and walk every day. And then, because I have AIA insurance, I'm part of the AIA Vitality program, and because of that, it measures that as well. And then I can earn points, which earn me rewards. I can get shopping vouchers and gift cards, and even a reduction in my premium. Now, AIA is not the only company that does that, but a lot of companies are starting to do that now, and this one certainly won't be the last. So here's the third thing that's happened. The world is flat. The internet's broken down the barriers between people and companies, even countries. Just look at this map here. Valerie Pieris pointed out there are more people living inside that circle than outside it. So think about that. More than 7 billion people on the planet, and 3.5 billion of them live inside that circle. China has 1.4 billion, India 1.3, Indonesia 250 million, Bangladesh 160 million. Further down the list, Sri Lanka, where I was born, 23 million. Same size as Tasmania, same population as all of Australia. And you can see how the power's shifted in the last 200 years, because in the 19th century it came from here, from the muzzle of a musket. In the 20th century it came from here, driven by the dollar. In the 21st century, it'll come from here. This is true people power, and this is what we face in our fast, flat, and free world. So if we think about our 2020 vision and looking forward, this is what we're facing. And you think about those populations. I told you the two biggest, China 1.4, India 1.3 billion. What's number 3? Okay, it's a bit of a trick question. Facebook. 1.2 billion people. That's the most conservative estimate I could find. Some people are already saying more than 1.5, 1.6 billion active users every day. So we've got a website with a bigger population than the biggest country on the planet. After that's LinkedIn, and only after that do we get another nation state. And of course, with people comes power, economic power. For most of the last 50 years, our world economy has been dominated by 7 countries. The USA and Canada, the UK, Italy, France, Germany, and Japan. We know them as the G7. But PwC predicts that by 2030, which is not so far away, those 7 countries are going to be overtaken by 7 emerging economies, what they call the E7. So Brazil and Russia, Turkey and Mexico, India, China, and Indonesia, 2030, which is not so far away. And then if you look ahead another 20 years, when the power of the G7 has faded, we're going to have another 7 countries, which are now the frontier markets, or the F7, which will share power, economic power, with the E7. So we've got Peru and Colombia, Nigeria and Morocco, the Bangladesh, Philippines, and Vietnam. That's what our world is going to look like a generation from now. Now, if you look at those countries, the G7, the E7, and the F7, there's one country that doesn't appear in any of those lists, right? So what does this mean for us here in Australia? Well, let me ask you about another country. If I asked you which country is represented by watches, chocolate, cheese, and cuckoo clocks, what would you say? Switzerland, yeah, right. And there are a lot of benefits to living in Switzerland. For starters, their flag is a big plus. So thank you for laughing at that joke, because I road tested that on my 11-year-old niece, and she said if they laugh at that, they're just being kind. So here's my point, and I do have one, that some people are calling Australia the Switzerland of Asia, and it's not a bad analogy, because if you think about anywhere in the world that you could live and be really objective about it, what sort of places would you look for? A place with a democratic government, with a strong economy, and a stable currency and financial system, and a few other things. And if you think about our little country, the world's smallest continent, but right on the footsteps of this Asian century, there's never been a better time to be alive and working than now, and to be than here in Australia. But like Switzerland, we've got to be willing to adapt. So watches are still one of Switzerland's biggest exports, but now we also have gold, pharmaceuticals, and vaccines. So what does this all mean for us? What do all these changes mean? One big thing that's happened is there are more people in the world now who say, I matter. And I don't mean in an egocentric, I'm the center of the universe kind of way, because I'm sure you know people like that, and I hope you're not people like that. But these are people who are innovative, who are inspired and can inspire, who don't wait to be told, who don't wait to be asked, who don't wait for permission. People like Natalie Tran, one of Australia's most watched YouTube users. Every time she uploads a video to YouTube, she gets at least 500,000 views. This one got 21.5 million. And she doesn't run a big video production company. She lives with her parents in Western Sydney and just uploads this video to YouTube. And it's not the flashiest productions either. She just looks at everyday situations and finds humor in them. It's like Seinfeld, but funny. Here, two young Australian girls who run Charlie's Crafty Kitchen. 8-year-old Charlie on the right, 5-year-old sister Ashley on the left. They have one of the world's most popular food and cooking channels on YouTube. Millions of visitors a month, and it's all free. But because of the amount of traffic they get, they can generate a little bit of pocket money through Google advertising. True. So here's the thing. Natalie and Charlie and Ashley couldn't have done that 10 years ago, because 10 years ago, TV used to control visual access to the masses, but it doesn't anymore. This is my 6-year-old niece, Maggie, with her dad, my little brother. She's a digital native. So she's grown up with iView and online video. I was babysitting her recently, and I said, Mags, would you like to watch some TV? And she said, no thanks, because you can't choose. And it's true with things like newspapers as well. They used to control access to not just news, but jobs and real estate and entertainment, but they don't anymore, because we can influence where you go for your next holiday, where you go out to eat, even where you can buy your insurance. So these are some of the changes that are coming, and we've hardly started. We're only just getting started in terms of this industry. So we're going to have a little bit of a glimpse into the future today, and I want to share with you 6 broad things. The first of this Asian century we've talked about already. We're going to talk a little bit about our aging population and what that means for us, and the drive to digital. So we're going from analog and physical to digital. The end of distance, which is a big phenomenon that's affecting us, especially here in Australia. We now have more and more people who have access to more information than ever before and can publish it. And finally, as I said, we live in basically the I society, society of individuals. So let me do a little bit of crystal ball gazing over the next 45 minutes or so. I'm a futurist, and I feel as a futurist, I need to establish my credentials. So I'm going to do that by predicting the future myself. And I'm going to do this with a little magic trick, a card trick. And now you may wonder, what's a card trick got to do with our future? But I can tell you there are 3 really important lessons that you will learn from this that are absolutely essential for us to be fit for the future and to look beyond 2020 vision. So I have a prediction here that I've made, and I'm going to hand it to David, please. Could you please hold on to that? And there's something in there. Don't open it just yet. Just make sure I don't go anywhere near that. And I normally do this with a pack of cards, but I don't have one, so I'll use my invisible pack of cards here. And what I'll do is, you can see with my invisible pack of cards, I've split them into reds and blacks. Would you take either the reds or the blacks? Okay, and just so we're clear, which one did you take? Reds? Okay, good. Right, now the black cards here, let me separate them into clubs and spades. Neil, will you point to either the clubs or the spades? Spades? Yep, take those. Okay, so we're down to the clubs, and I'm going to separate them again into, actually put them down here, the number cards, which are ace to 10, and the 3 picture cards, jack, queen, and king. Would you please take either the numbers or the pictures? And just pick them up. Which one did you take? Just so we're clear, the numbers or the pictures? Numbers, okay, great. Okay, so the 3 picture cards left here. And ma'am, would you please take, of those, there's a jack, the queen, and the king of clubs. Would you please take 2 of them and give them to me? Actually, no, don't give them to me, because I don't want to touch the cards. Would you please give them to the lady next to you, to Katie? Which 2 did she give you? It's the jack, the queen, and the king of clubs. Which 2 did she give you? You can choose. The queen and the king? Are you sure? Do you want to swap? Do you want to swap? Because you can swap if you want to. You happy with that queen and the king? All right, so we're left with 1 card here. It's the jack of clubs. Would you please hold it up so everyone can see? Great, thank you, thank you. And David, could you open the prediction that I made earlier, please, and just show it to people? Because by process of elimination, we do have this 1 card left, and for those who can't see it at the back, it is the jack of clubs. All right, that's pretty good, right? Oh, thank you, thank you. All right. So I know this is a really smart audience, and you've all figured out how it's done, so I don't need to explain that. But what? You want me to explain how it's done? All right, I'll tell you how it's done, but don't tell anyone else. All right, so here's how it works. So the first thing is always going to be the jack of clubs, because that's the only card I've got, right? Now, the way it works is that whatever response I get, I interpret it the way that I want. So when I first started saying, Davey, would you like the reds or the blacks? And you took the reds, great. We don't go anywhere near those again. We just keep working with the blacks. If you'd taken the blacks, then I go, okay, Davey, now would you please hold up the clubs and the spades? And Howard can point to one of them. If he points to clubs, we keep them. If he points to spades, they get eliminated. And all the way down till we end up with 1 card, the jack of clubs. Okay, get that? Right? Pretty good, right? Don't tell anyone how it's done. But you have my permission to do that yourself if you want to. As I said, there are 3 really important lessons you will learn from this, which are essential for us being fit for the future. The first one is, I had to know where we were ending up, and I had to take the lead to make sure that we got there, regardless of what else was going on around me. And the second thing is, I could have done this with just 1 person, but it's a much better experience when I involve more people. And the third one is that anyone who does any sort of magic knows that it's never about the secret. It's all about what you do in engaging with the people, having a bit of banter, a bit of joking, and so on. And that's what makes a difference. So broadly, when we have a look at our glimpse into the future, in our world where it's personal and people say I matter, these are 3 things I want to look at. So first of all, what do you do to have a bigger perspective and a longer vision for the future? So we'll look at a little bit of the technology and other trends. I want to show you how to involve your customers and clients in the way that you deliver your products and services. And finally, how to engage more deeply with your team members. When Albert Einstein was teaching at Princeton University, he was criticized 1 year because he gave his students the same exam 2 years in a row. But he said, the questions are the same, but the answers are different. Now, I'm no Einstein, but I reckon the same thing applies today, that we are all kind of trying to ask the same questions that we've always asked. How do we get more business? How do we keep our clients? How do we get the best people? How do we get the most out of them? But some of the answers are different. So let's look at some of those questions and answers. And in the limited time that I've got, we've only got a bit of, I can only give you an overview, but if you'd like to give me your business card later, I've arranged with the ALUCA committee that we'll send you some additional resources later so you can look at some of these things in more depth. So let's look at the first of these, which is about you taking the lead. And so one of the big things that's happening is the way that we look at the future and the way that we plan for the future. And I'm going to demonstrate this by actually, I've got a little bit of a puzzle here. So you can see these 4 cards, and you can see the back of 2 of them and the front of 2 of them. And if I make this statement, that every red-backed card has a dragon on the other side, and I'd like to know if that's true or false. Now, you don't have enough information yet to be able to tell me whether that's true or false. You need to turn over some of the cards. Right? Now, you can obviously turn them all over and tell me the answer, but what I'd like to know is, what's the minimum number of cards, and which are they, that you need to turn over to be able to tell me whether that's true or false? So I'm going to play a little bit of funky music and give you the chance to talk at your table. What's the minimum number of cards you need to turn over to tell me whether that's true or false? All right, let's see where you got to. So you definitely need to turn over card number 1 to see where there's a dragon on the other side. You don't need to turn over card 3 because it's got a yellow back, so it becomes irrelevant. You also don't need to turn over 4 because if it doesn't have a red back, then it's irrelevant, and if it does, it actually doesn't give you any more information. You do need to turn over 2 because if there's a dragon on the other side, then the statement's false. So this is the answer. You need to turn over 1 and 2. How many people did get that? Yeah, okay, a few, right? Okay. So here's the thing, right? Here's the thing. Most people get number 1 because it's about red back cards and there's a red and a back. Most people don't get number 2 because there's no red, there's no back, there's no dragon. And I reckon when we're looking into the future, there are 2 kinds of things, there are 2 kinds of futures. One is where you can see what's coming up and you have to work towards it, and sometimes it's a bit challenging to get there, but you can see what's coming up. And the second kind is where you can't see what's coming up, but you still have to prepare yourself with the skills that will help you cope with this uncertain future. And most people are pretty good at number 1, not necessarily at number 2. Let's look at number 2 first. So what are the skills for the future? The Institute for the Future came up with a list of 10 skills for the future workforce which can't be outsourced or automated. So these are kind of like safe skills to have and worthwhile skills developing. So I'm just going to ask, any guesses as to what some of those might be? In fact, I might even play a little bit of music and give you 30 seconds to talk at your table about what some of those skills might be. All right, I'm not going to give you a lot of time, but I just want to call out. Can I have about cup 2 or 3? What do you think a skill for the future might be? Coding? Yep. Okay, what else? Anyone? Patience. Okay, and one more? What was that, sorry? Empathy. Okay, let me share what those 10 are, and I'm sure you came up with some others while you were working at your tables. I've grouped them into 3 areas. So the first 3 are skills about taking information in, the next 3 are about sharing that with the world, and the last 4 are about relationships. So did anyone get this? Okay, no, not yet. Okay, let's do an easy one. No, okay, so this isn't going as well as I expected, so I'll share with you what they are. By the way, social intelligence, which is number 7 on the list, is exactly empathy. Coding falls under computational thinking. So a lot of the things we do have. Right, so these are 10 skills for the future workforce. And I reckon in this industry, anyone who's successful in business, I reckon you probably got at least 5 of them. And I reckon these 5, most people have got. So cognitive load management is a little bit about managing information overload and managing all the changes. Now, it doesn't mean you're perfect at it, but I reckon if you're doing successfully, if you're doing well, then you've probably got that covered. Computational thinking is about being good with numbers, and many people in this industry are good with numbers. Novel and adaptive thinking means means you look at a new situation and you create a way to get an outcome, which is what you do with clients every day. The skill of transdisciplinarity is about being able to apply your skills across different disciplines or be able to communicate with people in different disciplines and different areas of expertise. And again, you do that with your clients every day. And I reckon you've also got the idea of social intelligence, which is empathy, which is looking beyond just what's presented to you and helping people find personal goals and making sure they can manage the risk around that. It's not to say that you don't do any of the other 5, but today I reckon you've got those 5, and I want to give you a little bit of a glimpse into 3 others. So sense making, which is about finding patterns, a design mindset, which again I think you've got, is designing systems and processes, but I want to show you about involving your clients in that. And then finally, the idea of cross-cultural competency, which is really about diversity, not just different cultures, but different generations, gender diversity, and so on. Okay, so as we look at those 10 skills and you think about what that means for us, I want to share with you some of the interesting technology that's coming our way. There's a lot of technology, but I want to focus on one which affects us a lot in Australia, which is the idea of the end of distance. So for a long time, we in Australia have suffered the tyranny of distance, but sometimes it's been a benefit for us as well, that we live in a land that's girt by sea and far from the madding crowd, but now, suddenly the whole world is open to us, and that's good and bad. For example, things like self-driving autonomous cars. This Google self-driving car already driven millions of miles on regular roads, and they've solved the biggest problem, which is being able to drive with other human drivers around them. In the not-too-distant future, the only cars on the road will be self-driving cars because it's much safer. And that has huge implications. Car insurance is the obvious one because individuals don't need car insurance. But no, not many people are involved in that insurance, but it has other implications as well. For example, parts of regional Australia will suddenly become really attractive, because they're attractive for lifestyle, but they're a long way away for people to work. But when you have the end of distance, you might be in Adelaide and you need to get to Melbourne, and what you do one evening is you pull out your smartphone, call up a car, and program the destination in Melbourne you want to get to, and you go to sleep, and the car drives you there. You wake up the next morning, and you hope you end up at the same spot that you programmed in. Okay. But it does make parts of Australia, particularly regional Australia, really attractive again. You see these drones, which are currently there. You see a lot of remote control drones, but the next step is autonomous drones, so they navigate themselves. They're used for delivering products and services. Amazon.com already has this technology. There are 2 barriers. One is that it's waiting for the US government to regulate airspace for drones. And the second one is customers are worried that when a drone delivers a package on their doorstep, their neighbors are going to come and steal it. Okay, now those aren't technology problems. They're problems that can be solved. Another big change is the idea that people don't want to work in an office anymore. They want to work from home, or they want to work from an internet cafe or a co-working space. And this changes the dynamics of the workplace and the way that where people live, when they work, and how they work. And this is going to change the whole of society, because we'll have people working from home, which changes the way that their whole lifestyle works. One more example, and this is virtual reality. So I was speaking at a conference in Brisbane last year, a real estate conference, and realestate.com was demonstrating their virtual reality software. So you put on a headset, and if you want to buy a property, but you don't live close by, you might be on the other side of the world, you put on the headset and you can do a virtual inspection of the property. You can look around, up, walk through rooms, just as if you were there. How many people here have tried out some kind of virtual reality? Can I just see? Okay, good. So quite a few people have. If you haven't, I recommend that you invest $15 and buy Google Cardboard. Okay, Google Cardboard, you just order it, it arrives, you fold a bit of cardboard 6 times, stick your phone in, and it turns your phone into a virtual reality headset. If you haven't done this, it's worth trying, because only when you try it will you realize some of the potential. And the next step from that is where you can actually upload yourself as a virtual avatar into the virtual reality world. So I was at a futurist conference in Melbourne earlier this year, and one of the exhibitors is this guy who runs a business where he does full 3D body scans of people. So in his studio, he's got 87 cameras set up at different angles, and you stand up, presses the button, it takes a photo from all these angles, and it creates a software version of you. At the exhibition, he didn't have the full setup. He had 8 cameras, and he was just doing facial 3D models. So of course, I had to have a go at it. So I did that, and a few days later, he emailed me this, a virtual reality model of my face. Okay, so you can imagine that this is where virtual reality is heading, where you can experience things in the virtual world before ever experiencing them in the real world. I want to do one of the polls. So we set up a poll here, and the 4 things that we've talked about, if you could take out your app and go to the polling section for the people who've got it set up. So of the 4 things that we've covered, so it looked at self-driving cars, autonomous drones, working from anywhere, and virtual reality. I've used the word threat. So what's the biggest threat, do you think, to your business and to this industry? But really, you might see it as the biggest opportunity, or you might see it as the biggest disruption. All right, so let's see if we can get the poll results coming up. Whoops. Here's some of the results. Okay, so what do we see? As you can see, as people are voting, the votes are going up. There's no right or wrong answer to this question. So I'm just curious to know, what do you think is the biggest difference this is going to make to your business, to your industry? All right, great. All right, so interesting that most people think that virtual reality is one of the biggest disruptors to this industry. Okay, good. And actually, the idea of people working from anywhere. Okay, good. Thank you for that. Thanks for trying that out. Because I think many of those things, or any of those things, could be potential disruptors. It's just the way that you deal with them. And the real value comes in not just looking at those things individually, but looking at how they work together. And this is the skill of sense making, is looking at patterns and figuring out how things can work together. And if you understand that, you'll be much better prepared for our future. So for example, so the idea is be a connector. For example, in healthcare, you can imagine that in the not too distant future, when somebody is having a heart attack, a driverless ambulance will come along to pick them up. A paramedic in it, but there won't be a driver. And because all the cars on the roads are driverless, you don't need flashing lights and a siren, because that ambulance will automatically get right of way over all vehicles. On the way there will be some technology either implanted underneath the patient's skin or on their clothes that will transmit data about the condition from the body wirelessly to artificial intelligence software that will do a diagnosis in the cloud and send that information to a cardiologist so she's ready to do exactly the right procedures that's needed when the patient arrives. Also, on the way, there'll be a 3D printer in the ambulance that prints a stent for that operation customized to that patient. And then a drone will deliver equipment and medical supplies that's required for that operation. All of that technology exists already. It's not connected yet, but it exists. And you can imagine that being disrupted when you have nanotechnology surgery. So you're having a heart attack, you swallow a pill, and a tiny army of robots goes to work inside you doing the surgery. What could possibly go wrong in that scenario? I'll give you one example in insurance, one of many, the idea of big data. So you're now collecting data from people, not just what they submit themselves, but from devices connected to themselves, their cars, their homes, and that goes into creating a plan and their risk profile and a risk management plan. And then you get things like Pokemon Go, gamification. So people have an incentive to play games to improve their health and to improve their lifestyle, which will help them reduce their premiums. And then you can imagine going into a virtual reality world where they upload themselves and they look at themselves in the future, and that keeps them motivated towards their goals. And then combined with that, on a day-to-day basis, when they're interacting with the world, they might have glasses or their smartphone, which not only gives them, like in this case, the calorie counter of something they're about to eat, but also matches that to their lifestyle plan and their risk profile. So they get real-time feedback. Again, that technology is here. We just don't have it connected yet. And the next step, which is just starting to happen, is that a lot of that information, that data, is collected from the person's DNA before they're born. And that helps to create their plan for their future. Okay, so think about how you can connect some of the technology that's coming our way. If you want to know a little bit more about what I'm following, what I'm reading, and some interesting stuff, then please download my app, which is called Fit for the Future. It's free, it's ad-free, and the purpose of creating it is just so that you can keep in touch with what I'm doing and what I'm watching, what I'm reading, and some of my new ideas. So that's available for you later as well. I want to talk about involving your clients in the way that you run your business and the way that you manage your business. Because what we have is a push towards the digital world from the analog world. So remember I said at the start that our world is fast, flat, and free. And if that's good, the opposite of that is slow, bumpy, and expensive. And if anything in your business or in the industry that's slow, bumpy, or expensive is a potential risk or an opportunity for a competitor. The example that everyone knows is, of course, the taxi industry, highly regulated, highly controlled. That is an example of slow, bumpy, and expensive. Along comes Uber, which was illegal and is still illegal in some places, but it offered such a better, compelling experience that governments and society have changed to allow a fast, flat, and freer alternative to the taxi industry. In healthcare, my dad had a heart attack 10 years ago, and he's okay now, but as a result of it, he has to go and see a cardiologist every 6 months and go have an ECG, an expensive series of tests. But now you've got this little device here, a live core, which you attach to your iPhone, and you can do an ECG yourself. This is actually a demonstration of someone doing it, but it actually looks like this. And you do an ECG yourself, it costs $1 a test. The data is sent wirelessly to a remote monitoring center. And the inventors of this software predict that in 10 years' time, they'll have collected information from millions of patients around the world, millions of pieces of data. They'll be able to predict heart attacks and strokes before they occur. Okay, so that's another example of something that used to be slow, bumpy, and expensive, but is now fast, flat, and free. And it's not just about technology, it's also about jobs. So, if you have income protection insurance, the whole idea of own occupation is one kind of category of the insurance. However, what does it mean when occupations change and jobs change? So 2 Oxford University researchers did a study about hundreds of occupations, and they ranked them in terms of what is most likely to be obsolete soon and what is most likely to be safe. I'll show you 10 of the examples they came up with. So here are 10 of them, and 5 of them have a higher than 97% chance of becoming obsolete in the next few years, and 5 of them have a less than 1% chance of becoming obsolete in the next 5 years. So I'm going to give you a minute to talk at your table and figure out which is which. So which of them are likely to be around and which of them are likely to go. Okay, let me share some of the results. So jewelers, going to be obsolete soon. Secretaries and admin assistants, going to be obsolete soon. Actually, I've alternated them. So those 5 are jobs that aren't going to be around very much, and the other 5 are jobs that this Oxford University predicts are going to be around in the future. So what does this mean? If you have own occupation insurance policies, so jobs are changing. And the other really interesting thing that's changing is that we live in a very client-centric world. So your customers and clients have more opportunity than ever before to be able to influence the way that they interact with you and the way that you run your business. Behavioral economist Dan Ariely calls this the IKEA effect. So people who assemble their own stuff, and he's done research in this, people who assemble their own stuff place a higher value on it. They don't want to give it away. They place a higher price if they have to sell it, and they don't want to destroy it afterwards at the end of the experiment. Because remember that your customers and clients absolutely have some of the best ideas, and they want to share them with you, they want to be involved with you. And sometimes they don't seem like the best ideas, but it may be that they actually become feasible in the future. Let me show you an example here. So here's an example of this guy in this photo who's taking a photograph of himself with his phone on the end of a big dustpan. Now, of course, we call that a selfie, right? And selfie sticks, so if you want to sound smart, monopods are all the rage. But that idea started off as a bit of a joke. It came from a book that was published in 1995 in Japan. And the author of the book collected inventions from all around Japan, which he called not exactly useful, but somehow not altogether useless. Right? And it's called 101 Unuseless Japanese Inventions. So you can still download the book from Amazon. It's great. You see inventions like this. This is a hair visor for bald men who... Yeah, a lot of women laugh at that one. This is one of my favorites, which is a helmet if you want to get on the train to work, you can sleep. It's got a suction cup at the back so you can sleep standing up, and a note at the front with your destination, a polite note to other passengers to tell you how to get there and when you're going to get there. Okay, so these ideas are a joke, but keep in mind that your customers and clients do have some great ideas. And in the additional resources, I'll send you some innovation questions you can ask in a client or customer-centric world that will help you incorporate your customer ideas into your business. Okay, the third thing I want to talk about is engaging with your team, because your team members are smart, talented, savvy individuals who can do much more than their job descriptions, because we do live in the I society. I have a maths degree from the University of Western Australia, which means that by law, I have to show at least one graph in every presentation. Okay, so this shows our changing population from the ABS. So a generation ago, it looked like this. So these different age groups, you can see lots of babies and young people at the bottom, not many older people at the top. The last time we did a census, well, one that worked, there were people at many more different age groups. And the prediction is that by 2050, it'll even out, it'll flatten out. So this has two important consequences. One, which is pretty obvious, which is that we have an aging population, so they will need planning for later in life, but also means we can tap into their resources, their wisdom, their insight for longer. The second interesting consequence of that is that for the first time, we have 4, maybe 5 generations of people working together in the same workforce, in the same workplace. And that brings up some interesting challenges and opportunities. And one of the biggest opportunities is the opportunity for the Gen Ys and the millennials, because they're the people who are going to be making decisions about insurance for the rest of their life. And you might have those people in your workplace already. As one investor said, insurance investor said, these are the people who at this age, they're making important decisions about their insurance. And one of the most important things you can do is communicate across different generations. And I know communicating across different generations can be even worse than communicating with different languages, right? So what I thought I'd do is in the next 5 minutes, so I can't solve all the communication problems of the world, but I thought in the next 5 minutes I might tackle one of them, which is communicating across different generations. So I'll solve the intergenerational communication problem of the world, which is good, right? You weren't expecting that from one of the opening presentations. So I'm going to start. Can I just see a quick show of hands of the Gen Ys again in the room? Yep, okay, so this is for everybody else. I'm going to show you how Gen Ys communicate. All right, so, and I'll show you how they communicate online. Let's say in Facebook, if you say something on Facebook and you get this response TMI, it means you've overshared, because that means too much information. Now, if you say something and you get this response ROTFL, it means they're rolling on the floor laughing. The one that you probably know is the alternative to that is LOL, which means, of course, laughing out loud. And you've got to be careful with this one, because my mum told me when she was growing up and they used to write letters, LOL meant lots of love. Okay, so you don't want to get that wrong. You don't want to go, so sorry to hear that your dog died, LOL. It means something quite different. And one more, WTF, which we all know means welcome to Facebook. Well, that's what I told my mum. So don't look so smug, Gen Ys, because we had smartphones before you were born. So that's how Gen Ys communicate, and I feel that I should return the favor and also tell Gen Ys how we communicate, how other generations communicate. Now, I'm not a Gen Y myself, so I figured out there's a language that all generations understand. It's a language of music. So I've written a song. Now, this song works much better when it's accompanied by a piano. I have one here. Isn't it great that Qantas allows you to take pianos and hand luggage with you now? All right. So let's see. Can you just amp the bass, please, a bit, Brad? Actually, no, don't do that. I have no idea what that means. I just always want to say it. All right, let's see if I can get the right key here. La, la, la. Don't mention that I can't sing. All right, I'll see if I can get somewhere near the right key.